I woke up that Tuesday morning before Thanksgiving with the kind of ache in my chest that doesn't come from your body. It comes from somewhere deeper, somewhere only a mother knows. My name is Vanila Washington. I'm 63 years old, and I've lived in the same house on Cascade Road in Atlanta for 37 years. My husband Reginald and I bought this house in 1988 for $145,000, back when a black family buying into this neighborhood was still something the neighbors whispered about. We paid it off in 22 years. Every brick, every floorboard, every window, paid for with 2 shifts, 3 jobs, and a dream we refused to let go of. Reginald passed 5 years ago. Heart attack. 62 years old. He was sitting at our kitchen table eating the pound cake I'd made him, and then he wasn't. Just like that. 41 years of marriage, gone in the time it takes to pour a cup of coffee. I thought the worst thing that would ever happen to me had already happened that morning. I was wrong. Before I tell you what happened that Thanksgiving, let me ask you something. If you're watching this, especially if you're a woman over 60 who's given your whole life to your family, drop a comment and tell me where you're from. Tell me if you've ever felt invisible in your own home. I want to hear your story too. And if this resonates with you, please hit that like button and subscribe. These stories matter because too many of us have lived them in silence. Now, let me tell you how I lost my family and how I found myself. It started 2 weeks before Thanksgiving. I was in my kitchen, the same kitchen where Reginald took his last breath, preparing to do what I'd done every year for 40 years, make Thanksgiving dinner for my family. My mother, Mama Rose, God rest her soul, was born in 1925 in Selma, Alabama. She lived through things most of you can't imagine. Cross burnings on her daddy's porch, cousins who disappeared in the night, separate water fountains and colored-only signs that burned themselves into her memory until the day she died at 92. But every Thanksgiving, no matter how hard the year had been, Mama Rose set a table. She'd say, "Baby, when the world tries to tell you that you ain't somebody, you sit at your own table and you eat. You remind yourself who you are." I was taught that Thanksgiving wasn't just a holiday. It was a declaration. It was saying, we survived, and we gathered, and we are a family. So I took her recipe book down from the shelf, that leather-bound notebook with pages so soft they felt like cloth, and I started planning. I drove to the Whole Foods in Buckhead on Tuesday morning. 18-pound turkey, $87. I could have gone to Kroger, but for Thanksgiving I wanted the best. Then I drove out to the DeKalb Farmers Market for my collard greens, my sweet potatoes, my fresh herbs. I bought pecans from a vendor who sold them in brown paper bags, because that's how Mama Rose taught me pecans should be bought. I came home and spread everything out on my kitchen counter like I was laying out offerings. I tied on the apron Reginald gave me for our 30th anniversary, pale blue with small white flowers, faded now from all the washing, and I started to cook. For 3 days I cooked. I cooked like a woman in love, because I was. In love with my children, in love with the memory of my husband, in love with the idea that this house, this table, this food, could hold my family together one more year. I made the cornbread dressing from scratch. I baked 3 pies, pecan, sweet potato, and pumpkin, because my grandson Zion only eats pumpkin. I made mac and cheese with 4 kinds of cheese the way my mother-in-law taught me back in 1985. I seasoned the turkey on Wednesday night and let it sit overnight, the way a proper Southern cook does. I even polished the silver Reginald's mother gave us when we got married. 8 place settings. I laid them out on the dining room table over my grandmother's lace tablecloth. I placed fresh yellow and red chrysanthemums in a crystal vase in the center. I lit a candle and said a prayer over the food before I went to bed Wednesday night. Lord, let this be a good one. Let my babies come home and remember who they are. Let us be a family again. I didn't know it yet, but God had already answered my prayer, just not the way I expected. Let me tell you about my family. My son Darnell is 38. He's a software engineer at a company downtown. He and his wife Jasmine have 2 children, Zion, who's 9, and little Nia, who just turned 6. Darnell was my first baby, the one I held in my arms when I was 25 years old and scared to death I wouldn't be a good enough mother. Reginald and I both worked double shifts to put that boy through Morehouse College. We co-signed his first mortgage. We helped him buy his first car when he got his first job. Darnell used to sit on my lap and sing church songs with me. He used to call me Mama, like it was the most important word in his vocabulary. My daughter Kimberly is 35. She's a dentist, has her own practice in Buckhead, married to Terrence, who's a lawyer. They have one daughter, Aaliyah, who just turned 11. Aaliyah is the light of my life. She's got her grandfather's eyes and her great-grandmother's gentle spirit. Kimberly was my wild child, my dreamer. She said she was going to be a doctor when she was 7 years old, and I stayed up late every single night helping her study until she got there. When she met Terrence in law school, he was studying law, she was studying dentistry. I had my reservations. He was a man who corrected her grammar at the dinner table, a man who told her she was lucky to have him. But she loved him, and she was grown, so I kept my mouth shut. I've been keeping my mouth shut for 15 years. On Saturday morning, 11 days before Thanksgiving, Kimberly stopped by unannounced. "Hey, Mama," she said, breezing through the front door without taking off her designer sunglasses. "I just came to grab that roasting pan you said I could borrow." "It's in the pantry, baby." She disappeared into my pantry while I stood at the kitchen island, hands deep in a bowl of pecan filling. I heard her Bluetooth earpiece beep, and then her voice, lower now, thinking I couldn't hear her. "Yeah, babe, I'm at her house right now. No, she doesn't suspect anything. We just need to get her to sign the papers after dinner. She'll be emotional. It'll be easier that way." I know. Terrence said the same thing. I froze. My hands, sticky with pecan filling, hovered above the bowl. My heart started beating so hard I could hear it in my ears. Get her to sign the papers. Kimberly came out of the pantry, roasting pan in hand, still on her call. She didn't look at me. She kissed the air near my cheek and said, "Thanks, Mama, I gotta run. Love you." And she was gone. I stood in my kitchen for a long time after she left. My pecan filling started to separate in the bowl. I didn't notice. I was thinking about every strange conversation I'd had with my children in the last 6 months. Every visit that felt too short. Every phone call where they asked how my health was in that voice. That voice people use when they're hoping for a specific answer. I called Gloria. Gloria Jackson has been my best friend for 40 years. We taught at the same elementary school together for 28 of those years. Gloria is the kind of woman who tells you the truth whether you want it or not. She's the reason I didn't lose my mind after Reginald died. "Van, baby, what's wrong?" she said, the moment she heard my voice. I told her what I heard. Every word. Gloria was quiet for a long time. Then she said, "Vanila Washington, you listen to me. I don't know what those children are planning, but I know this. You were raised by Rose Elizabeth Freeman. You are not some helpless old lady they can trick into signing her life away. You keep your eyes open this Thanksgiving. You watch everything. You listen to everything. And you do not, I repeat, do not, sign a single piece of paper without calling me first. You hear me?" "I hear you, Glor. And another thing, you call Reverend Thompson too. Let him know what's going on. That man loves you like a sister, and he's a notary. He'll help you if you need him." I hung up the phone and sat at my kitchen table. The same table where Reginald died. The same table where I'd nursed my babies. The same table where I'd graded papers for 35 years. And I thought, if my own children are planning something against me, what am I supposed to do? Then I thought about Mama Rose. I thought about what she'd say. "Baby, you set your table anyway. You cook your food anyway. You invite them into your house anyway. And you watch them show you who they really are. The truth always comes out at a Thanksgiving table. Always." So that's what I did. Thursday morning, Thanksgiving Day. I woke up at 5:30 like I do every morning. I made my coffee. I read my devotional. I prayed for my family. And then I put the turkey in the oven at 6:15. The sun came up over Atlanta slowly that morning. Pink light spilled through my kitchen windows. I stood at the sink in my robe and watched a cardinal land on the dogwood tree in my backyard. The tree Reginald planted the year Kimberly was born. The cardinal sat there for a long moment, and I swear it looked right at me. My grandmother used to say cardinals are visitors from heaven, that when you see one, someone who loved you is watching over you. "Morning, Reggie," I whispered. The cardinal flew away. I got dressed in my best Thanksgiving outfit, a burgundy wrap dress Reginald had picked out for me at Macy's 10 years ago. He'd said, "Vanilla, you look like royalty in that color." I put on my pearl earrings. I touched a little Chanel No. 5 to my wrists, the perfume I only wear on special occasions. I looked in the mirror and I saw a 63-year-old woman with silver streaks in her hair and lines around her eyes and a body that had carried 2 babies and buried a husband. I said to my reflection, "Vanilla, whatever happens today, you remember who you are. You are Rose Elizabeth Freeman's daughter. You are Reginald Washington's wife. You are a teacher. You are a woman of God. And nobody is going to take that from you." Then I went downstairs to finish cooking. At 10:30, I heard the first car pull into my driveway. Through the window, I saw Darnell's black SUV. Jasmine got out first, holding Nia by the hand. Zion jumped out of the back, already running toward my front porch. Darnell got out last, on his phone, not looking up. I opened the front door with a smile that felt like it belonged to somebody else. "There's my babies!" Zion ran straight into my arms. Grandma, I'm so hungry. Did you make cornbread?" "Of course I made cornbread, baby." "Go on in the kitchen. It's on the counter." He was gone before I finished the sentence. Nia followed, clutching her stuffed bunny, more shy than her brother. Jasmine gave me a hug that barely touched me. "Hey, Mama. Happy Thanksgiving." She pressed a cheap bottle of wine into my hand. Trader Joe's, $6, I knew because Kimberly had bought me the same bottle last month. "We brought this." "Oh, thank you, baby. You didn't have to." "It's nothing." Darnell finally hung up his call and came up the walkway. My boy, 38 years old, 6'2", built like his father. He hugged me, but it was the kind of hug where your arms go around someone, but your spirit stays somewhere else. "Hey, Ma." "Hey, son. How was the drive?" "Fine." He was already walking past me into the house. "Is the game on?" "Cowboys kick off at noon." "The remote's on the coffee table, baby." He disappeared into the living room. Within 30 seconds, I heard the television come on, loud. Jasmine followed him inside without another word to me. I stood in my own doorway for a moment, watching my family spread out through my house like they were checking into a hotel. Watch them show you who they really are. I closed the door and went back to the kitchen. At 11:45, the second car pulled up, Kimberly's white Mercedes, Terrence's black BMW right behind it. Aaliyah got out of Kimberly's car first. My baby, my angel. She was wearing a purple dress I'd bought her for her birthday, and her hair was done up in 2 braids with purple ribbons. I opened the door and she flew into my arms. "Grandma," I held her so tight. "Oh, my sweet girl, Grandma missed you so much." She pulled back and looked up at me with those big, serious eyes, Reginald's eyes, and she whispered, "Grandma, are you okay?" My stomach dropped. "Of course I'm okay, baby. Why do you ask?" She glanced back over her shoulder. Kimberly was getting out of the car, adjusting her sunglasses, not yet looking at us. Terrence was climbing out of his BMW on his phone. Aaliyah's voice got even quieter. "Mommy and Daddy were talking in the car. They said, 'Aaliyah!'" Kimberly's voice cut through the air like a knife. "Come here. Leave your grandmother alone. She's busy." Aaliyah froze. She looked up at me with panic in her eyes. I squeezed her shoulder gently. "Go on, baby. We'll talk later." She ran back to her mother. Kimberly grabbed her hand a little too tightly and marched her up the walkway. Kimberly didn't hug me. She air-kissed near my cheek. "Hey, Mama, kitchen smells amazing." "Thank you, baby." Terrence came up last, his phone still pressed to his ear. He walked right past me into my house without a word. Didn't take off his coat. Didn't say hello. Didn't wish me a happy Thanksgiving. He walked straight to my dining room buffet, the one where Reginald kept his whiskey, and poured himself a glass of the Macallan I'd been saving for a special occasion. $200 a bottle. He took a sip and finally looked at me. "Ma, good to see you." And then he walked into the living room where Darnell was watching the football game and sat down in Reginald's leather recliner, the chair no one had sat in for 5 years. Reginald's chair. He put his feet up on the coffee table, leaned back, and took another sip of my dead husband's whiskey. I stood in the doorway of my own living room, in the house I'd owned for 37 years, and I realized something that should have been obvious for a long time. I was a stranger here. I went back to the kitchen. My hands were shaking, but only a little. I kept moving. That's what Mama Rose taught me. When you don't know what to do, keep moving. Keep cooking. Keep praying. The answer will come. I pulled the turkey out of the oven to let it rest. I stirred the gravy. I took the cornbread off the counter, half of it already eaten by Zion, with crumbs scattered across my clean floor, and cut it into squares. I could hear them all in the living room. Terrence and Darnell laughing at something on the TV, Jasmine and Kimberly whispering to each other in the corner, Zion running up and down the hallway with his toy truck. And somewhere in the middle of it all, I could hear my granddaughter Nia crying softly because no one was paying attention to her. I went out to the living room to get Nia. "Come on, sugar. Come help Grandma in the kitchen." Nia reached up for me, and I picked her up and carried her back to the kitchen with me. She was too heavy for me to carry for long, but I did it anyway. I sat her on the counter and gave her a little piece of pie crust to nibble on, and she stopped crying. "You're the only one who noticed, Grandma," she said. I kissed the top of her head. "Grandma always notices you, baby." And then I heard Kimberly's voice from the dining room, too loud, too close. "Terrence, where did you put the folder?" Terrence's voice muffled. "In the kitchen, on the island." "Why?" My heart stopped. I turned slowly toward the kitchen island, and there it was, a manila folder, thick, tied with a black ribbon, sitting next to my bowl of pecan filling. I hadn't even noticed it when I came in because I'd been thinking about Nia. I walked over to it. I could hear Kimberly's heels clicking down the hallway toward the kitchen. I flipped the cover open, just the corner, just enough to see the top page. My hand went cold. In bold letters across the top, transfer of property, 1247 Cascade Road, Washington Family Trust. And below that, in smaller print, petition for conservatorship, Vanila Washington. The kitchen door swung open. "Mama," Kimberly's voice was sharp. "What are you doing?" I let the folder fall closed. I turned around with a smile on my face that I'd learned to make over 40 years of being a black woman in America. "Just wondering whose paperwork this was, baby. I was going to move it before dinner." Kimberly crossed the kitchen in 3 long strides and snatched the folder off the island. "It's Terrence's work. He brought it from the office by mistake." She held it against her chest like it was a baby. "On Thanksgiving?" I said, keeping my voice light. "He's been busy, Mama." She looked at me. For just a second, her eyes met mine, and I saw something there. Something I'd never seen in my daughter's eyes before. Guilt, and underneath the guilt, something worse. Determination. "Dinner's almost ready," I said. "Why don't you call everyone to the table?" Nia was still sitting on the counter behind me, watching silently, her little hand frozen mid-air, holding that piece of pie crust. Kimberly looked at Nia, looked at me, and for a moment, I thought she was going to say something real, something true. Instead, she turned on her heel and walked out of the kitchen, folder still clutched to her chest. I stood there in the sudden silence. I looked down at my hands, the same hands that had held my babies, graded 5 generations of third graders' papers, held my husband's hand while he took his last breath. And I knew what this Thanksgiving was going to be. I turned to Nia and lifted her down from the counter. "Baby, go wash your hands for dinner. Grandma will be right there." She trotted off toward the bathroom, clutching her bunny. I stood alone in my kitchen. I placed both hands flat on the island where that folder had just been sitting. I closed my eyes, and I whispered the only prayer I had left. "Lord, give me strength. Don't let me break. Not today, not in front of my babies." Then I picked up the platter with the turkey on it, lifted it high like an offering, and I carried it out to my dining room table. I had a dinner to serve. I carried that turkey out to the dining room like I was carrying my own heart on a platter. 40 years of Thanksgiving dinners. 40 years of setting that table, lighting those candles, watching my babies come running when I called them to eat. And here I was, walking into a room where the people I loved most in the world were plotting against me. But I kept my head up. I kept my hands steady, and I set that turkey down in the middle of the table like a woman who still had some dignity left. "Y'all come onto the table now," I called out. "Food's getting cold." They came in one by one. Darnell first, still holding his phone. Jasmine behind him, picking at her fingernails. Zion bounced in and climbed into his chair. Nia sat next to me, reaching for my hand under the table. Aaliyah walked in holding her mother's hand, looking at the floor. Kimberly and Terrence came in last. Terrence was still carrying that glass of Reginald's whiskey. He set it down next to his plate like he owned the place. Everyone sat down, and for just a moment, just one blessed moment, the dining room looked the way it was supposed to look. My family around my table, the candles flickering, the food I'd worked on for 3 days steaming in front of us, my grandmother's lace tablecloth under all of it. I sat down at the foot of the table. I looked at Reginald's empty chair at the head. I took a deep breath. "Before we eat," I said, "let me bless this food the way your daddy used to, the way his daddy used to, the way it's been done in this family for 4 generations." I bowed my head. I reached for the hands on either side of me, Nia's little hand on my right, and Aaliyah leaning across the empty chair to hold my left. I started to pray. "Heavenly Father, we come to you this Thanksgiving with grateful hearts. We thank you for this food, for these hands that prepared it, and for the family gathered around this table. We thank you for 40 years of memories in this house, for the man who built this family with me, whose chair sits empty, but whose love, amen." Terrence's voice cut me off like a knife through butter. "Let's eat before the food gets cold." And he reached across the table and started loading mashed potatoes onto his plate. Just like that. My prayer dropped on the floor like it was nothing. Kimberly reached for the gravy. Darnell reached for the turkey. Jasmine reached for the mac and cheese. Forks clinked against plates. Spoons scraped against serving dishes. And I sat there, at the foot of my own table, with Reginald's chair still empty beside me, and my prayer still unfinished in my throat. Aaliyah squeezed my hand under the table. She didn't let go. I looked at her, my 11-year-old granddaughter with her grandfather's eyes, and she was the only one at that table who understood what had just happened. "Grandma," she whispered, "finish your prayer." I squeezed her hand back. I straightened my shoulders. I lifted my chin, and I spoke, quietly but clearly, over the sound of forks and serving spoons. "Whose love, Lord, still fills this house? Amen." Aaliyah whispered, "Amen." Nobody else said a word. I served myself slowly. I watched the meat. Terrence was eating like he hadn't seen food in a week, taking huge forkfuls of my mac and cheese, my collard greens, my cornbread dressing. Not one compliment, not one word of thanks, just shoveling it in. Darnell was eating quietly, head down, not looking at me. Kimberly was pushing food around her plate, barely eating. Every few seconds she'd glance at Terrence, then at me, then back at Terrence. Something was coming. I could feel it in the air, the way you can feel a storm coming before the first raindrop falls. I tried to make normal conversation. That's what mothers do. We try. "Darnell, how's work, baby?" "Fine, Ma." "Jasmine, how are the kids' schools this year?" "They're good." "Kimberly, how's the practice?" "Fine." I tried again. "Aaliyah, baby, how's 5th grade treating you? You reading any good books?" Aaliyah looked up, grateful to be spoken to. "I'm reading—" "Mama!" Terrence's voice cut across the table. "Can we talk?" I set my fork down. "Of course, son. What's on your mind?" He wiped his mouth with my mother's linen napkin. He took a sip of Reginald's whiskey. He looked at Kimberly. Kimberly nodded. "We've been thinking," Terrence started. "And we've made a decision about your living situation." My living situation. I folded my hands in my lap. "Is that right?" "This house," Terrence said, gesturing around my dining room with his fork, "is too much for you. It's 4 bedrooms, the upkeep, the property taxes, the maintenance. It's a lot for a woman your age." I didn't say anything. I just watched him. "So Darnell and I, and Kimberly, we put a deposit down on a place for you. Sunrise Senior Living over in Sandy Springs. Real nice place. Independent living with support services. You'd move in January." The whole table went quiet. Even Zion stopped eating. I looked at Darnell, my son, the boy I'd carried in my body for 9 months, the boy whose fever I'd nursed, whose heart I'd broken when I told him Santa wasn't real, whose tears I'd wiped when he got his first C. "Darnell," I said softly, "you went along with this?" Darnell didn't answer. He was staring at his plate like the answer was written in the gravy. "Son, look at your mother." He looked up, and I saw a flash of the little boy he used to be, the one who used to crawl into my lap during thunderstorms. But then he looked at Jasmine, and Jasmine gave him a tiny, almost invisible shake of her head. And the little boy disappeared. "Ma, it's a nice place," Darnell said. "Daddy's been gone 5 years. You shouldn't be rattling around this big house alone." "I am not rattling, Darnell. I am living," Kimberly jumped in. "Mama, we're not trying to upset you. We're trying to help you. The house is just sitting there, and we already found a buyer. Some nice young couple from Charlotte. They offered $520,000 cash. $520,000 for the house Reginald built for us. The house where he taught our son to ride a bike in the driveway. The house where he died. You already found a buyer? Yes. Without asking me. Mama, without asking me, Kimberly. My daughter had the grace to look ashamed, at least for a second. But then Terrence put his hand on her arm and she straightened up. Ma, we'll discuss the details after dessert. I have the paperwork ready. You just need to sign and we'll handle everything else. Sign the papers. She'll be emotional. It'll be easier. I heard Kimberly's voice in my head from 11 days ago. I looked around my dining room table, at my 2 children who had planned this without me, at my son-in-law, who was the architect of it all, at my daughter-in-law, who looked away every time I tried to meet her eyes, at my grandchildren, who had no idea what they were witnessing. And I made a decision. I wasn't going to cry. I wasn't going to beg. I wasn't going to make a scene. I was going to let them hang themselves with their own rope. All right, I said. Let's talk about it. Terrence smiled, a victorious smile. He thought he'd won. Jasmine, I said sweetly, would you pass me the sweet potatoes, baby? Jasmine passed them. I spooned some onto my plate. So, I said, keeping my voice light, where do y'all see me in 10 years? Kimberly blinked. What do you mean, Mama? I mean you've made this plan for me. Help me understand the long-term vision. I'm 63, Sunrise Senior Living. Then what? Terrence jumped in, confident, lawyerly. Sunrise has continuing care. As your needs increase, you move into assisted living, then memory care if necessary. It's all on one campus. Memory care, I said. That's for dementia patients. If you need it. I don't have dementia, Terrence. Not yet, Ma, but you're 63. You have type 2 diabetes. The Washington women on your mama's side, several of them had early onset Alzheimer's. It's genetic. Better to plan ahead. So he'd done his research. He'd studied my medical history, my family history. He'd built a whole case against me before he ever set foot in my house today. That's very thorough of you, son. I just care about you, Ma. I took a bite of sweet potato. I chewed slowly. And the money from the house? Where does that go? Kimberly answered this one. Into a trust, for your care. Managed by Terrence and Darnell as co-trustees. Not you, Kimberly? She hesitated. We thought it would be easier if Terrence handled it, since he's the lawyer. I took another bite. And my savings? Reginald's life insurance? And that's when Kimberly made her mistake. Well, Mama, that's the other thing. Daddy's life insurance, that $400,000. If we move you to Sunrise, that money could... She stopped. She'd realized what she'd said. The dining room went dead silent, because I had never told my children about that life insurance policy. Not once. Not ever. Reginald had taken out that policy 2 years before he died. He'd told me, Van, if anything ever happens to me, this is your nest egg. Don't tell the kids. Don't tell anybody. This is yours. For you. Promise me. And I had promised him. I had never spoken that number to a living soul. Not even to Gloria. I looked at Kimberly. Baby, how do you know about that money? Kimberly's face went gray. Terrence jumped in fast. Financial planners share information, Ma. It's not a secret. Financial planners share information with the person who owns the policy, which is me. So I'll ask again. I set my fork down. How do you know about that money? Silence. Then I looked at Darnell, my firstborn, my boy. Darnell, how do you know about that money? Darnell's face was the color of ash. Ma, son, tell your mother the truth. And that's when Aaliyah spoke, my sweet, quiet 11-year-old granddaughter, who had been watching everything with her grandfather's eyes. She turned to her mother, and she said in a voice that was clear and confused and innocent, Mommy, is that why you said Grandma's going to die soon anyway, so it doesn't matter? The sound that left Kimberly's throat was not a word. It was a gasp. Aaliyah, you said it in the car. You said she's 63, she's got diabetes, she might as well... Aaliyah, enough! Terrence roared. But Aaliyah wasn't listening to him anymore. She was looking at me. Grandma, I'm sorry. I didn't understand what they were saying, but it sounded mean. I told Daddy it sounded mean, but he told me to be quiet. And then Zion, 9 years old, blessed with that same childlike honesty, Zion looked up from his plate and said, Daddy said Grandma is stubborn, but if we make her feel guilty, she'll sign anything. Jasmine gasped. Zion! It's true, Mommy. You said it too. You said Grandma's guilt button is her kids. Jasmine reached under the table and yanked on Zion's arm. He yelped. Ow! Mommy, that hurts! I stood up. Not loudly, not dramatically. I just stood up. My napkin dropped to the floor. Everybody stopped moving. Terrence recovered first. He always did. He pulled a leather portfolio out of the bag at his feet and set it on the table, right next to my platter of turkey. Ma, let's stop playing games. I've drafted a petition for conservatorship. Your diabetes, your age, the fact that you live alone. Any judge in Fulton County will sign this in 10 minutes. So here's your choice. He flipped the portfolio open. Papers. So many papers. With little yellow tabs marking where I was supposed to sign. You can sign these papers tonight. Transfer of the house. Power of attorney. Trust documents. Nice and easy. Or we do this the hard way. Court. Hearings. A guardian ad litem. Public record. Your neighbors reading about it. Your church family hearing about it. He slid the portfolio toward me. Your choice, Ma. Kimberly was crying now. Mama, please just sign. Please don't make us embarrass you. And my son? My sweet boy, Darnell. He finally looked up at me. His eyes were wet, but he didn't say anything. He didn't defend me. He didn't stop his wife or his sister or his brother-in-law. He just sat there. I looked down at my dining room table. I looked at the turkey I had cooked for 3 days, at the cornbread dressing from my mother's recipe, at the lace tablecloth from my grandmother, at the candle Reginald had given me our first Christmas together. I looked at the empty chair at the head of the table, and then I looked at my family, one by one. Terrence leaning back in his chair, whiskey in hand, waiting. Kimberly, crying. Darnell, not meeting my eyes. Jasmine, her hand still on Zion's arm. Zion and Naya, confused and scared. And Aaliyah, my Aaliyah, crying silently, mouthing the words, I'm sorry, Grandma. I'm sorry. I took a deep breath, and I started to speak. Let me tell you children something. My voice was calm. I didn't raise it. I didn't have to. I have been a black woman in America for 63 years. I grew up in a house in Alabama where my mama had to sit in the back of a bus. I integrated a white elementary school when I was 7 years old. I was spit on and called names that would make you burn with shame to hear. I put myself through college at Spelman working 2 jobs. I taught 3rd graders for 35 years, children whose parents were on drugs, whose mamas were in jail, whose daddies were dead. I raised those children right alongside my own. And I raised you too, while your father worked double shifts at the post office. I raised you to know your history, to love your people, to respect your elders. I paused. I looked at each of them. You think I don't know what's happening in my own house? You think I'm some foolish old woman you can trick into signing away everything I spent my whole life building? Let me tell you what I know. I turned to Darnell. Darnell, I know you refinanced your house twice. I know you are $180,000 underwater. I know this because your daddy and I co-signed that original mortgage, and the bank still sends the notices here. I never said a word to you. I kept waiting for you to come to me, to ask your mother for help. You never did. Darnell's mouth opened. No sound came out. I turned to Kimberly. Kimberly, I know your dental practice has been losing money for 2 years. I know this because Gloria's nephew works at your bank. I know you tried to take out a $500,000 business loan 3 months ago using my house as collateral, before you even asked me if I'd allow it. The bank called me. I told them no. Did you know that? Did you ever wonder why that loan didn't go through? Kimberly's face crumpled. I turned to Terrence. Terrence, I've known exactly what you were since the day my daughter brought you home 15 years ago. A man who corrects his wife's grammar in public is not a man who loves her. A man who refuses to hug his mother-in-law at Thanksgiving is not a man who respects this family. You married into this family for what you thought we had. A paid-off house. Professional children. A matriarch sitting on a life insurance policy. His face went completely still. I turned back to all of them. And there's one more thing. Something none of you know. Something I have carried alone for 5 years. I took a breath. Your father's heart attack. Kimberly started to cry harder. Your father did not die in his sleep the way I told you. Your father died sitting at the kitchen table, that kitchen table right there, eating a piece of pound cake I'd made him. I looked at Darnell. He died 2 weeks after the bank called him about a $50,000 withdrawal from our home equity line that he did not make. Darnell's face went white. A withdrawal that was made with a signature that looked almost exactly like his, but wasn't. It was yours, Darnell. Your father spent the last 2 weeks of his life trying to figure out why his own son had forged his name to take $50,000 out of our house. He was trying to decide whether to call the police on his own child. The stress of it killed him. "Mama, no!" Kimberly was sobbing. "Yes, Kimberly." I looked at my son. "Your daddy called me from the kitchen that morning. He said, 'Van, I need to tell you something when you come home.' But by the time I got home from the store, he was dead at the table. I found the bank papers in his coat pocket when I was going through his things. I've had them for 5 years. In a safe deposit box downtown." Darnell made a sound, like an animal being hurt. "Mama, I didn't—" "Ma, please. You invested it in some cryptocurrency scheme with Terrence. Didn't you, son?" Darnell covered his face with his hands. Kimberly turned slowly to Terrence. Her makeup was running down her face. "Terrence, is that true?" Terrence didn't answer. For the first time all night, he had nothing to say. "Is that true?" "Kim, it was an investment? You killed my daddy?" "Kimberly, don't be dramatic." Kimberly stood up. Her whole body was shaking. "You killed my daddy." Jasmine was crying now. Zion and Nia were crying too, not understanding but feeling the storm around them. Only Aaliyah was quiet. Aaliyah was watching me. I picked up my napkin from the floor. I folded it neatly. I placed it beside my plate. I walked around the table to where Aaliyah was sitting. I knelt down. I took her face in my hands. "Baby, listen to Grandma. None of this is your fault. You hear me?" She nodded, tears streaming down her cheeks. "You were brave tonight. You told the truth. Your great-grandmother Rose would be so proud of you. Your grandfather Reginald would be so proud of you. Grandma, don't leave. Baby, I have to leave for a little while, but I am not leaving you. Do you understand? You and me, we're going to be just fine." I kissed her forehead. I stood up. I walked to the hall closet and got my coat. The wool coat Reginald had given me our last Christmas together. I picked up my purse. I came back to the dining room doorway. They were all still sitting there, frozen, broken. Nobody knew what to do. I looked at my dining room table one more time. "I cooked this meal for 3 days," I said. "I cooked it because I love my family. I cooked it because 40 years ago a man named Reginald Washington asked me to marry him at this very table. I cooked it because my mother, Rose Elizabeth Freeman, taught me that when the world tries to tell you that you ain't somebody, you sit at your own table and you eat." I looked at Terrence. "But you are not my family. You never were. Take your papers. Take your conservatorship. Take them to whatever judge you want. I'll have my own lawyer waiting." I looked at Kimberly. "Daughter, I love you, but you broke my heart tonight." I looked at Darnell. "Son, I've been waiting 5 years for you to come clean to me. You still haven't. I don't know if you ever will." I looked at Aaliyah. "Baby girl, Grandma will call you tomorrow." I turned to walk out, and then I stopped, and I turned back. "Oh, and one more thing. When you leave my house tonight, lock the door behind you, because tomorrow morning I'm changing the locks." I walked out of my dining room. I walked down my hallway. I walked out my own front door, and I closed it behind me. The night air hit me like a blessing. I stood on my front porch for a moment. My breath came out in little clouds. The cold felt good, clean. It felt like the first real breath I'd taken in 5 years. Above me, the stars were out, bright and cold and ancient. I walked to my car. I got in. I started the engine. I called Gloria. She picked up on the first ring. She always did. "Van?" "Glor, I need to come over." "Come on, sister. I got sweet potato pie in the oven." I pulled out of my driveway. I drove down Cascade Road toward Gloria's house on the west side. The streetlights blurred as I drove. I didn't cry. I didn't cry. I thought about Reginald. I thought about that last morning. I thought about the cardinal I'd seen on the dogwood tree that morning, the tree he'd planted for Kimberly when she was born. As I pulled up to the stoplight on Cascade and Fairburn, a cardinal flew across the hood of my car, in the middle of the night, bright red in the headlights. I pulled over to the side of the road. I put my head down on the steering wheel, and then I cried. I cried for my husband. I cried for my children. I cried for the mother I had tried so hard to be. I cried for the grandmother I still was. I cried for the woman I was about to become. And somewhere in the middle of those tears, I heard Reginald's voice, just as clear as if he were sitting beside me. Van, you did good, baby. You did good. I sat up. I wiped my face. I put the car in drive. I kept going. Gloria opened her front door before I even knocked. She was standing there in her house robe and slippers, her silver hair pulled back in the same kerchief she'd worn for 40 years when she was cooking. She didn't say a word. She just opened her arms. I walked into them. I put my head on her shoulder, and I let go. It's all right, sister. It's all right. Come on in this house. She led me into her kitchen, sat me down at her little round table, and pushed a plate of sweet potato pie in front of me. She poured me a glass of sweet tea. She sat down across from me, and she waited. That's what a real friend does. She waits. I ate 3 bites of pie before I could speak. Then I told her everything. I told her about the folder on the kitchen island, about Terrence drinking Reginald's whiskey, about Kimberly crying, about Darnell not looking at me, about Aaliyah telling the truth with the innocence of a child, about Zion letting his daddy's words fall out of his little mouth like marbles on the floor. I told her about the conservatorship papers, about the house sale they'd already arranged without me, about the life insurance money they somehow knew about, and I told her about Reginald, about the forged signature, about the $50,000, about the real reason my husband's heart gave out at our kitchen table 5 years ago. Gloria listened to all of it. She didn't interrupt me once. She just sat there, her eyes on mine, her hands wrapped around her own glass of tea. When I was done, she said, Vanila Washington, do you remember what your mama used to say to us when we were girls? Which thing? Mama said a lot of things. She used to say, a woman who knows who she is cannot be moved. You can break her heart, but you cannot break her spine. I nodded. I felt the tears coming again. Well, sister, Gloria said, tonight they tried to break your spine, and you didn't let them. You walked out of that house on your own 2 feet. You hear me? You walked out. Glor, I feel like I lost my family tonight. No, baby, you didn't lose them. You found out who they were. There's a difference, and that is not the same thing. She reached across the table and took my hand. Tomorrow morning, we start fighting back. Tonight you eat this pie, and you sleep in my guest room, and you let your soul rest. I slept in Gloria's guest room that night. It was the first real sleep I'd had in 5 years. The phone calls started at 7 the next morning. The first one was from Aaliyah. Grandma? Hey, baby. She was crying. Grandma, Mommy and Daddy had a big fight last night. Daddy left. Mommy is crying in her room. I'm scared. Oh, sweet girl. Grandma, can I come stay with you? I closed my eyes. I took a breath. Baby, not today. Today, Grandma has to take care of some grown folks' business. But I promise you, I'm going to call you every single day. And as soon as Mommy says you can come visit, you are coming to stay with Grandma for a whole weekend. Just you and me. We'll make pancakes. We'll paint our nails. We'll watch old movies, okay? Okay. I love you, Aaliyah. I love you too, Grandma. Grandma? Yes, baby? I'm glad you told the truth last night. I almost broke right there, but I held it together. Baby, you're the one who told the truth. Grandma just followed your example. The second call was from Darnell, then the third, then the fourth. By 10 o'clock that morning, my son had called me 17 times. I didn't answer a single one. Gloria made me breakfast. Grits, scrambled eggs, bacon, biscuits. I didn't think I could eat, but I ate all of it. My body knew what my heart didn't. It was going to need strength for what was coming. At 11, Kimberly texted me. It was 3 pages long. I read it while Gloria washed the dishes. It started with, Mama, I know you're hurt and I want you to understand my position. It ended with, I need you to be a mother to me right now, not make this about yourself. I read it twice. Then I put my phone face down on the table. Gloria dried her hands on a dish towel. What'd she say? She says I need to understand her position. Gloria snorted. Her position. Lord have mercy. What position would that be? The position where her husband killed her daddy and she still wants Mama's house? Something like that, Glor. You gonna answer her? Not today. Good. At 2 in the afternoon, Terrence sent me an email through his law firm's official address. with his law firm's letterhead. It was a cease and desist letter. He was accusing me of defamation of character for what I'd said at the Thanksgiving table. He was threatening to sue me if I repeated my false accusations to anyone else. I forwarded it to Gloria's lawyer, Patricia Hollis. Patricia called me back within the hour. "Sister Washington, I just read what your son-in-law sent you. Let me tell you something. This man is bluffing, and he's bluffing badly. Truth is an absolute defense against defamation. If what you said is true, and from what Gloria's told me it is, he has no case. But the fact that he's trying to intimidate you tells me everything I need to know about him. Can you come to my office Monday morning?" "Yes, ma'am. Bring every document you have. Bank records, the bank papers from the safe deposit box, your deed, your husband's death certificate, your life insurance policy, all of it." "Yes, ma'am." "Sister, you listen to me. This man came for the wrong black woman." I smiled for the first time all day. Something happened on Friday afternoon that I want to tell you about. I was sitting in Gloria's living room, watching her feed her little Pomeranian, when my phone rang. The number was unknown. I almost didn't answer it, but something told me to. "Hello? Sister Washington, this is Reverend Harold Thompson from Ebenezer Baptist." Reverend Thompson, 70 years old, the pastor who had buried my husband, the man who had sat with me in my kitchen 3 days after the funeral, drinking coffee, saying nothing, just being present. "Reverend, how are you?" "Sister, Gloria told me what happened last night. I hope that's all right." "Of course it is. Sister Washington, I've been a pastor for 42 years. In those 42 years, I have watched a lot of families go through hard times. And I have watched a lot of people try to take advantage of the elders in our community. I just want you to know, the church is here for you. Whatever you need. Legal support, emotional support, practical support. Whatever." I couldn't speak. "And one more thing, sister. I don't know if you knew this, but I'm a notary public. If you need to update your will, change your power of attorney, change your beneficiaries on anything, you come down to the church. Bring your documents. I'll help you do it privately. No one will know but you and God." I started to cry. "Reverend, thank you." "Sister, you listen to me. Your husband Reginald was one of the finest men this church ever knew. And your mother Rose, that woman was a pillar in this community for 50 years. You come from good people. Don't you ever forget that. Don't you ever let anybody make you forget who you are." I hung up the phone and I sat there in Gloria's living room and I cried for 10 minutes. But they were different tears. They were the tears of a woman who had just remembered she was not alone. On Saturday morning, I went home. Gloria drove me. She wanted to come in with me, but I told her no. I needed to walk through that house by myself. I unlocked my front door. The house was spotless. Kimberly had cleaned it. Every dish washed. Every surface wiped down. The dining room table cleared. The leftovers packed neatly in Tupperware in the refrigerator. On my kitchen island, the same spot where Terrence had left that manila folder, there was a note. "Mama, I cleaned everything. I hope you'll forgive us. Please call me when you're ready to talk. We love you. Kim." I picked up the note. I walked it to the trash can. I dropped it in. Then I got to work. By Monday at 5 o'clock, I had done everything. I met with Patricia Hollis at her office downtown. I brought every document. She looked at the bank records from Reginald's safe deposit box, the ones I'd been keeping for 5 years. And she shook her head slowly. "Sister Washington, these records are airtight. Your son forged your husband's signature for a $50,000 withdrawal. That is a federal crime. We could prosecute him tomorrow." "I don't want to prosecute him." "I figured you'd say that. But let me tell you what we are going to do. We updated my will. Everything. The house, the savings, the insurance money, all of it was restructured. Aaliyah would receive a trust for her education, fully funded through college and graduate school if she wanted it. The remainder of my estate would go to Spelman College, the HBCU where I'd earned my degree, and to a scholarship fund in the name of Reginald and Mama Rose. My children were not beneficiaries of anything, not a dollar. Patricia looked up at me when I told her that. "You're sure, sister?" "I'm sure. It's your money. You earned every penny of it, but I have to ask, you don't want to leave them anything? Not even a sentimental item?" I thought about it. "Darnell can have his father's watch. Kimberly can have her grandmother's silver. That's it. If they want a relationship with me, they'll have to build it. Money doesn't come back into the conversation. Ever. Understood. I changed the locks on my house that same week. $450. Worth every penny. I met with a financial advisor and moved Reginald's life insurance into a separate account with only my name on it, and with specific instructions that no family member could ever access it without my written consent. I called the bank and closed every account that had any of my children's names on it as co-signers or beneficiaries. I called my homeowner's insurance and removed Darnell as my emergency contact. And then on Thursday, I drove downtown to the Wells Fargo on Peachtree Street. I went to Reginald's safe deposit box. I hadn't opened that box in 5 years. Not since I put those bank papers in there 2 weeks after his funeral. The bank officer brought me into the private viewing room. She set the metal box on the table. She left me alone and closed the door. I sat there for a long moment, just looking at the box. Then I opened it. Inside was everything I already knew was there. The bank papers, our marriage certificate, Reginald's Army discharge papers, a small jewelry box containing his wedding ring, an envelope with old photos of us when we were young. And at the very bottom, underneath everything else, was a sealed manila envelope I didn't recognize. My name was written across the front in Reginald's handwriting. Vanilla. Open if something happens to me. My hands started to shake. I had never seen this envelope before. I had gone through everything in our house after he died. Everything in his office, everything in his closet, everything in his car. I had found nothing like this. He must have put it in the safe deposit box in those last 2 weeks. The weeks after he found out what Darnell had done. I slid my finger under the seal. I opened the envelope. There was a letter, and there were documents. I unfolded the letter first. My dearest Vanilla, if you're reading this, something went wrong, and I am so sorry. I had a plan, baby. I was going to sit down with you after Christmas and tell you everything. But I've been so sick with worry these last 2 weeks that I don't trust my own heart right now. So I'm writing this, just in case. I found out what Darnell did. The $50,000. He forged my signature. He and that son-in-law of ours invested it in some foolishness and lost every penny. I confronted Darnell and he begged me not to tell you. He cried like a boy, Van. Our boy. I didn't know what to do. I didn't want to tell you and break your heart. I didn't want to call the police on our own son. So I made a different decision. Van, I took the rest of our savings, the money we were going to use for retirement, and I moved it. I opened a trust account that only you can access. There is $650,000 in it. Investments, mutual funds, everything. The paperwork is in this envelope. The account number, the passwords, the name of the advisor. His name is David Green, downtown. He's expecting your call if something happens to me. I did this because I don't trust the children anymore, Van. I think they're going to come for everything we built. I think Terrence has been poisoning them for years. I couldn't prove it, but I could feel it. The way they looked at us, the way they talked to you when they thought I wasn't listening. I should have told you all of this. I was just trying to figure out how to do it without breaking your heart. I'm sorry, baby. I'm so sorry. Van, listen to me. If I'm gone and you're reading this, don't you let them take what we built. Not one brick, not $1. You understand me? I built this life for you, for us, not for them to sell off to the highest bidder. And if they won't act like your family anymore, build yourself a new family. You always said you wanted to start a community kitchen. You always talked about feeding people, about doing something in your mother's name. Well, baby, here's your chance. This money is yours. Do something beautiful with it. You are the strongest woman I have ever known, Vanila Washington. You are stronger than all of them combined. Don't you forget it. I love you forever. Reggie. I sat in that bank room for a long time. I read the letter 3 times. Then I looked at the documents. Everything he'd promised was there. The account number, the financial advisor's name, the passwords, all $650,000 of it. Investments that had grown over the past 5 years. I ran a quick calculation in my head. With the growth, probably closer to $800,000 now. Reginald, my Reggie, he had known. 5 years ago he had known what was coming, and he had protected me from beyond the grave. I folded the letter. I held it against my chest. I closed my eyes, and I spoke to my husband for the first time in 5 years. Reggie, baby, I got it. I got everything. I promise you, they won't take what we built. I'm going to do something beautiful with it. Just like you said. I'm going to do something beautiful, baby. You watch me. 1 year later, the community kitchen sits on a corner lot in southwest Atlanta, in the Cascade Heights neighborhood, where I've lived my whole adult life. I bought the building 8 months ago with the money Reginald left me. It used to be an old hardware store that had been closed for 15 years. I had it renovated from the ground up. New kitchen, new dining hall with long wooden tables, new everything. Above the front door is a sign that reads, in gold letters, Mama Rose's Table, where everybody eats. Today is Thanksgiving, 2025. I am 64 years old. I have been up since 4 in the morning. The turkey fryers in the back parking lot have been running since 5. Gloria is in the kitchen with me, making sweet potato pie. Reverend Thompson is out front setting up the tables for the guests. Deborah Freeman, my neighbor from Cascade Road, who I've only really gotten to know this year, is writing the names of tonight's guests on name cards in beautiful calligraphy. We're feeding 120 people today. Single mothers, elderly folks whose families don't visit anymore, homeless men from the shelter on Auburn Avenue, foster kids, anybody who needs a seat at a Thanksgiving table. I sold my house last April. I didn't sell it to the buyers Kimberly had lined up. I sold it to a young black family from South Carolina, a teacher and a firefighter, 2 little children. I sold it for $580,000, and when I handed them the keys, I told them what every room in that house used to be. I told them about Reginald, about the dogwood tree, about the birds that came to the back feeder. The young mother cried, "Mrs. Washington will take good care of it." "I know you will, baby. That's why I picked you." I bought myself a townhouse in East Atlanta Village. 2 bedrooms, small patio, close to everything. It's the first home I've ever owned that was just mine. Not mine and my parents', not mine and my husband's, just mine. I planted a dogwood tree in my little patio garden the day I moved in. At 11 o'clock this morning, I was in the back kitchen at Mama Rose's table, seasoning the collard greens, when my phone buzzed. It was Kimberly. I looked at the screen for a long moment. Then I answered. "Mama?" "Hey, Kim." Her voice was small, smaller than I'd ever heard it. "Mama, I don't want anything. I just wanted to say Happy Thanksgiving. And I wanted to say I'm sorry. Again." I sat down on a stool by the counter. "Where are you, baby?" "I'm at home. Aaliyah's with me. We're having a quiet one." Kimberly had divorced Terrence 7 months ago. It turned out that cryptocurrency scheme wasn't the only thing he'd been involved in. When Kimberly's lawyer started digging, the lawyer Patricia Hollis referred her to, they found multiple fraudulent investments, client funds that were misplaced from his law firm, and 3 separate women Terrence had been involved with during their marriage. The firm fired him. The Bar Association opened an investigation. He's facing possible disbarment. Kimberly filed for divorce the day the bar investigation became public. She's been in therapy for 6 months. She lost the practice, had to sell it to pay off debts. She and Aaliyah are living in a 2-bedroom apartment in Decatur. She's working as a dentist at a clinic that serves Medicaid patients. Her whole life got smaller. And in getting smaller, something in her finally broke open. "Mama?" she said now. "Yes, baby?" "I see you, Mama." She was crying. "I see you. I see what you did. I see what you built. I see who you are. I was so caught up in Terrence and in wanting things I didn't have, I never stopped to see you. And Daddy, I'm sorry, Mama, I'm so sorry." I let her cry. I didn't rush her. I didn't fix it. I just let her feel it. "Kim," I said finally, "listen to me, baby. I forgive you." She gasped like I'd knocked the wind out of her. But forgiveness and trust are not the same thing. "I forgive you, Kim. That means I'm not angry anymore. That means I want good things for you. But trust has to be built back, brick by brick. You understand?" "I understand, Mama. Come see me next week. By yourself. Not for Thanksgiving. Just for a cup of coffee. And bring Aaliyah. We'll start there." "Okay, Mama. Okay. I love you, Kimberly." "I love you too, Mama." I hung up the phone and sat on that stool for a long moment. Then Gloria walked up behind me and put her hand on my shoulder. "She called?" "She called." "You all right?" "I'm all right, Glor." "Good, because we've got 120 people coming in 2 hours, and those collard greens ain't going to season themselves." I laughed. I laughed so hard I had to wipe my eyes. That's what family does for you. That's what sisterhood does. It makes you laugh when you want to cry. Darnell did not call me today, but 2 weeks ago a letter arrived in my mailbox, handwritten, 6 pages long. He confessed everything: the forged signature, the cryptocurrency, the lies, the debts. He told me he has been in AA for 11 months. He's in therapy twice a week. He's working the 12 steps. He's been sober from everything: alcohol, gambling, financial deception, all of it, for 1 year, 2 months, and 13 days. He doesn't ask to see me. He asks for 1 more year. He says, "Mama, I don't deserve to ask you for anything, but if you could give me 1 more year to become a man my father would have been proud of, and then maybe you'd let me come talk to you. I promise I won't waste it." I put that letter in a box. I'll answer it when I'm ready, maybe in a year, maybe sooner. I don't know yet. Jasmine left Darnell after he lost his job. She took Zion and Nia back to her mother's house in Savannah. I haven't seen my grandchildren in a year. I pray for them every night. That's the hardest part of all of this. The grandchildren I can't hold, the little hands I can't reach. But Aaliyah comes to visit me every other weekend now. Kimberly drives her down. Aaliyah sleeps in the guest room of my new townhouse. We make pancakes. We paint our nails. We watch old movies, Imitation of Life and The Color Purple, and Soul Food. Aaliyah is 12 now. She's starting to look like a young woman. She tells me about her life, and I listen to every word like it's scripture. Last month she said to me, "Grandma, when I grow up, I want to be like you." I said, "Baby, I want you to be better than me." She said, "Grandma, that's not possible." By noon, the tables at Mama Rose's table were filling up. I stood at the front door and greeted every single person who walked through it. "Welcome to Mama Rose's table, baby. Come on in. Get yourself something to eat." "Happy Thanksgiving, sister. God bless you." "There's a seat for you right over there. We're glad you came." Some of them knew me. Most of them didn't. But by the time they left tonight, every one of them would know. At 2 o'clock, right before we served the meal, Reverend Thompson stood at the front of the dining hall. He asked everyone to hold hands. "Heavenly Father," he said, "we come to you today with grateful hearts. We thank you for this food, for these hands that prepared it, and for every soul gathered at this table. We thank you for Sister Vanila Washington, who opened this place in the name of her mother, Rose Elizabeth Freeman, and in the name of her husband, Reginald Washington. We pray that this table will stand for many, many years, that everybody who walks through these doors will leave fuller than they came, in their stomachs and in their spirits. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen." "Amen," said 120 voices. Aaliyah was standing next to me. She squeezed my hand. I served that meal with my own 2 hands. I served gumbo. I served turkey. I served my mother's cornbread dressing. I served collard greens and black-eyed peas and mac and cheese. I served sweet potato pie and pecan pie and pumpkin pie. I served until my feet ached and my back was sore and my heart was so full I thought it might burst. And when the last guest had left and the tables had been wiped down and Gloria had gone home and the volunteers had finished washing the dishes, I sat down at the long wooden table in the middle of the empty dining hall. Aaliyah came and sat next to me. There was 1 slice of pecan pie left on a plate between us. "You want to split it, Grandma?" "Let's split it, baby." We ate that pie with 2 forks, both of us tired, both of us quiet, the late afternoon sunlight coming through the big front windows. After a few minutes, Aaliyah looked up at me. "Grandma?" "Yes, baby?" "Are you lonely?" I thought about her question for a long time before I answered. I thought about the woman I was 2 years ago, sitting alone at that dining room table on Cascade Road, waiting for a family that was only using me. I thought about the woman I was 1 year ago, standing in my kitchen holding a manila folder, knowing my own children were plotting against me. And I thought about the woman I was right now, 64 years old, widowed, estranged from my son, rebuilding with my daughter, a full day of work in my bones, my granddaughter beside me, my mother's name above the door, my husband's love still whispering in my ear. "Baby," I said, "there's a difference between being alone and being lonely. For 40 years I was surrounded by people and I was lonely. Now sometimes I'm alone, but I am finally free." Aaliyah nodded like she understood. Maybe she did. She leaned her head on my shoulder. Through the big front windows of Mama Rose's table, I saw a flash of red in the dogwood tree I'd planted in the little garden out front. A cardinal, bright and clear in the afternoon light, watching over us. I kissed the top of my granddaughter's head. I closed my eyes, and I whispered so quietly that only Reginald could hear me. "We did it, baby. We did it." They say a black woman who has given everything for her family will regret it when she gets old. They say we're supposed to hold our families together no matter what the cost. They say forgiveness means forgetting. But my mother, Rose Elizabeth Freeman, born in Selma, Alabama in 1925, my mama taught me something different. She taught me that you can love people and still walk away from them. She taught me that forgiveness without accountability is just another form of bondage. She taught me that the strongest thing a woman can do is sit at her own table, in her own house, on her own terms. It took me 63 years to understand what she meant. But I understand now. I cooked Thanksgiving dinner for 40 years for a family that saw me as invisible. This year, I cooked for 120 strangers who called me by my name. And for the first time in my life, I felt seen. If this story moved you, if you have ever felt taken for granted by the people you love most, if you have ever given everything and felt like you received nothing back, I want you to know something. You are not alone. You are not crazy. You are not wrong. You are a woman who deserves a seat at her own table. Come sit with me, sister. There's always room at Mama Rose's table.